Hello, everyone. I am so super excited to be here with all of you, chatting about what to do now to be ready when you're ready to buy a house. I personally bought my first house when I was 20 years old. It was absolutely terrifying and awful. So I have made it kind of my life's mission to come out here and help demystify the first time home buying process and really just make it a nice, easy, smooth, exciting, fun thing to do, because buying your first home or buying a home in general can be a really fun process. So hopefully by going through these slides today and spending this time together, I'll be able to help you to know what are the X's and O's that you have to have in order to also have a successful and fun time at buying your first home. And a little bit about myself. So I am the CEO of Elite Realty and Stars Realtor Training Academy. I have been at this for 20 years in both the real estate and the mortgage industry, wholesale and retail lending, residential, commercial, luxury, traditional, all the things. And I am also a Michigan Wolverine for all of you that are on from U of M, go blue. And I'm going to break this down really easy for you guys, but you are also always welcome to, snap pictures of the slides or email me after. I'd be happy to send them to you. And just to make it nice and easy, there's kind of just 5 simple steps that you're going to go through when buying a home. You're going to go through first and foremost your pre-approval process. Getting your docs together with your loan officer. And I actually have my fantastic loan officer, Greg Goddard, on the line as a special guest. So I'm going to let him talk to you guys about that in a moment. The next step is going to be your buyer's counsel. And this is a really important piece that we're going to dig into together. Then you're going to be shopping and looking for your home, going through your due diligence period, and then heading to closing. So I'm going to unmute Greg so he can start with where you should start, which is your pre-approval process. That's the first thing that you want to do before you do anything else. So let me get him unmuted and kind of turn the floor over to him for a moment.
Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Good evening. So my name's Greg. I'm with Cross Country Mortgage. We're a retail bank. So while we have retail options that means we're going to do everything under our bank, we do have the ability to shop other banks as well, which gives you opportunity. It gives us the flexibility to meet your needs. So realistically, a lot of times people think of the pre-approval process and they think that that's like committing them to buy a house. And I don't look at it that at all. We're sitting down and we're going to discuss your budget. We're going to discuss what is your comfort on purchasing a house? What do you have available from an asset standpoint that you can allocate to that you can use for this purchase? What do you feel comfortable spending monthly? So it's not necessarily we're pulling credit, we're doing everything short of drawing blood from you to make sure that you can buy a house, but we're going to sit down and we're going to make sure that you have all the pieces in place so that once you're ready to take that step, we can run forward. In terms of pre-approval, to actually get a pre-approval letter, you're going to need to basically allow us to verify these big 4 things. So obviously the credit pulls, most people are resistant. They're hesitant because they might have bad credit. They might not know what their credit looks like. They don't know what's on their credit. Understanding credit is nobody has a great understanding of credit because they don't give us the recipe. They just give us kind of an idea of what it looks like. So essentially there's 3 credit bureaus. The biggest misconception is a lot of times people are looking at like their Credit Karma, or they have a Capital One card that has a score on it. There's so many different types of scores. So the algorithm being used is super important because our guidelines require us to use a FICO score. And all FICO is a company that generates an algorithm that we have to follow. Credit Karma uses a Vantage score. So sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. It's a great monitoring tool. So it'll allow you to see what's on your credit, late payments, high credit utilization, things like that, but it does not give you an accurate score most often. I've seen it 100 points higher. I've seen it 100 points lower. So we can do a hard pull and pull that in, we can actually do a soft pull now. So we can pull where no one's going to know that we even pulled it. We're going to be able to see a score that most resembles the score that we're going to pull when we do that hard pull. And we have some simulators that we can look at to see your 3 different credit bureaus, your Experian, your Equifax, and your TransUnion scores. And we're always going to use the middle score. So it depends, there's no rhyme or reason for what your middle score is. Obviously, things that are bad for credit, having no credit, having never established a credit card, or never having a loan. And it's hard to get a loan when you don't have credit. So it's kind of the catch-22. There's the easiest way is to get added as an authorized user at an earlier age, or right now, or to go out and get a secured credit card. And if you've never had a credit card, or you've never had credit, it takes 6 months to get a score. So it's one of those things, you want to do it. And if you get that credit card and you don't have any history, you're going to kind of start in a neutral spot, typically somewhere in the like upper 6s, low 7s, which is great. That's a good starting credit score. You haven't done anything to screw it up yet. So having late payments, having high debt. So if you have a credit card that has a $500 limit and you have a $500 balance, it's maxed out. That's going to hurt your score. When you have nothing else, it's going to hurt your score a lot. So keeping the balances on your credit cards less than 20%, sometimes less than 10%, those are things that you want to make sure that you're doing. And you're making sure that you're doing it at all times, because we don't know when most times the creditors are reporting to the credit bureaus. So the secured credit card is certainly something I can advise on if you need to get started somewhere. If you have a significant other, if you have a parent that's willing to let you co-sign, that's certainly something to get added as well. So another big thing in terms of the credit is going to be your student loans. A lot of us are in college, I think. So making sure, depending on the program, if your student loans in deferment, we still have to assess a payment. So it's not something that we don't count at all. We still have to count it against your debt to income ratio, which is one of the other big factors when we talk about income. We're looking at all of your monthly payments. So realistically, depending on what that student, if you're in an income-based repayment versus if you're in deferment, might mean 2 qualifying payments, and that might mean qualifying and not qualifying. So things that don't count, utilities, phone bills, things that you could add to your credit, but we don't have to count because you could stop paying at any time. The next big quadrant is your income. So a lot of times people think, well, I need to have 2 years at my job, and that's not the case. We do need a 2-year work history, but a college degree does count. So if you're in schooling, even if it's like a trade school where you get some kind of certificate that shows that you've completed, we can use that in your 2-year time frame. I've helped lots of clients that finish, they haven't even started their job yet. They have an offer letter. They're getting an engineering degree. They're going to complete it in December. They're starting their new job in January. Technically, we could close in December and they could start that job after they close on their new house, as long as we have an offer letter with no contingencies. So that's sometimes something we have to work out with an employer, but I've helped plenty of clients get a house before they even started the job. The next quadrant would be your assets. So a lot of times we're very detailed in how we ask what the assets that you have available are, because they need to be seasoned assets. They need to be funds that are in your bank account, not showing that you took money from underneath your mattress, went into the bank, put it in. We can't source where that money came from. We can't use it. There's very stringent anti-money laundering regulations that we have to follow. It's not anything on us specifically. So we're typically looking at 30 to 60 days, so 2 months of your last bank statement. So we can go through and document any big, large deposits, any unnecessary activity. Even if you have, lots of, if there's times where you're getting those, where you don't have enough money and it's hitting you constantly, that they're going to ask us to source where those came from. So it has to be documentable. That you could get a gift. So if you have a family member that's willing to help out with your first purchase, a lot of times sometimes parents are setting up money for their kids, and that's totally something, as long as it's a family member or a fiance or something that we can document as like a very close friendship, we can use that money to show that it's a gift. People will sometimes borrow against a 401k. So if you have an established 401k, you're borrowing your own money, paying yourself back. you're buying an appreciating asset. So in my opinion, it's a good investment. And again, you're paying yourself back on a structured repayment. So it's something that, we can explore those different things. Going into the next slide a little bit, another thing that we can use towards asset is there is down payment assistance programs that exist. So sometimes, depending on the qualifying factors, you might have money that we can lend you, sometimes at no interest. That doesn't have to be repaid. Sometimes it has to be repaid when you sell the house. It's one of those things, depending on what you might qualify for. It's looking at it from the perspective you're using money that you don't have right now, and you're going to use money that you'll create an equity at the end of that house. So it's a good opportunity. So when we look at different mortgage types, there's really two big ones. The conventional and the FHA are kind of probably 90–95% of the loans that we do. You're looking most times somewhere between 3 and 3.5%. When we look at doing like some of the down payment assistance programs, they require 1%. So very low options. It used to be not too long ago that you needed 20%. So you had to have 20% to buy a house. And a lot of times people still think that that's the case. With good credit, you pay less in mortgage insurance and things that come with having less than 20% equity. And it saves you money. It's one of those things you have the opportunity. I think this year, I don't know what the stat is, Trish will probably talk about it more, but this year appreciation rates are somewhere between 10 and 15%. So someone that bought a house in January, when we get to December, they're going to have 10% equity more than that house. If they put 5% down, they're going to have 15% equity, which is unbelievable. So it's one of the best investments you can make right now. There is additional lending products like VA for veterans. We have USDA for rural areas that are both 0 down. So if you qualify, if you're a veteran, or if you're looking for a house in maybe a rural area, we can do a 0 down option, and both of those have very low or no mortgage insurance, meaning mortgage insurance is just essentially another category of pay that if you have less than 20% equity, you pay it along with your monthly payment. So it's certainly one of those things where in my consultation, I like to sit down and discuss, do we have a budget? Have you guys sat down and itemized out what you're spending monthly on all of your expenses? Does that fit into now looking at your income? What can you afford to then put down on a house? What can you then afford to pay monthly in your mortgage payment, so that we can kind of work backwards and come up with a price point that you should be looking at or staying around to keep yourself in a good position. It's one of those things, thinking a little forward to how long do I plan to live in this house? How much equity can I have or can I create? What are my intentions with this house? Is this something that I'm going to live in forever? Is this something that I plan to turn into an investment property down the line? Is this something that I can create the equity to then put into the next house?
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and that being said, a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, this is going to be my forever home. And I kind of giggle a little bit, because on average, people only actually stay in their home between 3 and 5 years. And that is actually even less when we're talking about your first home. So on average, your first home, most people actually only stay in it between 1 and 3 years. And like Greg was saying, with appreciation so large right now, there's people that bought homes in January and now they have enough equity to be able to sell those and move up to even bigger homes now. So once my clients are done talking to Greg and getting their pre-approval, then I sit down with them as their realtor, and you're going to choose your realtor, and you're going to sit down with your realtor, and you're going to have 2 parts to what we call a buyer's consult. And this is one of the most important things that you're going to do in your home buying experience, because at your buyer's consult, your buyer is going to sit down and ask you some questions. And if your realtor doesn't ask you to do a buyer's consult, they're probably not going to be a very good realtor for you, because this is the getting to know you phase. And this is where they give you the knowledge that you need to be successful in the current market. So make sure that you're choosing a realtor that does a buyer's consult with you. It's very important. And they should ask you, where do you want to live? When do you want to move? What is your ideal home and what areas, right? who is going to be part of this process. This is very important because if you are buying your first home and maybe mom and dad are giving some down payment money, they might want to be part of the process. They might want to come and look at the home with you. So that's important to know up front so that we're getting everybody's schedules together and aligned. And why do you want to move? What is your motivation for moving? Do you want to stay close to family, or do you want to get as far away from them as possible, right? Are you trying to move closer to a job or closer to, if you're a hockey player, closer to the arena that you're always playing and practicing at? So why are you looking to move and keeping that motivation in the forefront of your mind? And they need to know those things, because then based on that, they're going to talk to you about the current market climate. Is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? And when we talk about if it's a buyer's or a seller's market, what that means is how much inventory, how many homes are there for sale right now in the area that you're looking and in the price point that you're looking. So I'm glad that you guys are all on this webinar, because if you just listen to what social media tells you and what the news tells you, they're like, oh, it's a seller's market. Buyers have to make 150 offers and it's so awful for the buyers and yada, yada, yada. In some areas, there is a very small amount of inventory, and you may have to go into what is considered a highest and best situation where you're maybe bidding against other people who like the same home as you. But in other areas, there's not. When a client comes to me and say, for example, they want to move into West Bloomfield and their budget is, $900,000, there's not a huge amount of highest and best situations going on in that area and that price point. So that area and that price point right now today is more of a buyer's market. Whereas if you're looking in, say, for example, Livonia, where my office is at, that's very much a seller's market. So in a balanced market, meaning not buyers are better and not sellers are better, there's what's considered 6 months of inventory. So it takes 6 months to sell all the homes that were on the market if we didn't put any more up. If there is less than 6 months, then it's a seller's market. And if there is more, then it's a buyer's market. So that's what they're talking about when they say, whose market is it? They're talking about, if we didn't put any more houses on the market today, how long would it take for them to sell? And they base it on those months. The next thing they're going to want to run down is, what steps are in this process? What are we going to have to do to get you from today, sitting at this table for the buyer's consult, to the closing table? And we're going to unpack that now. How to make smart offers, what details go into making a smart, strong offer. And that's going to vary home to home and area to area as well. Timelines and expectations. So when are you trying to do this? How motivated are you to do it right now? What's considered portal access. So all realtors, they use what's called the MLS, and they put together what are called portals. So that's how you are going to go in and look at the MLS like an agent does. Now, lots of people, they start on, say, Zillow or Realtor.com or Trulia or one of those sites. And if you take nothing away from this conversation, what I want you to understand is those sites, Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia, they're not actually made to help people find homes. They are made to take your information when you put it in there and sell it to realtors. So for example, I, as a real estate broker, buy a zip code from Zillow for, like, say 48150. And then every time you go onto Zillow and you look for a house in 48150, your information comes to me. So I tell you that because Zillow does not have to keep accurate information on their sites. So that's why we want you to get pre-approved quickly and work with a realtor quickly, because once you get that portal access and you have a plan and steps in place, so even if you said, Trisha, I'm not looking for a home until next year, I would say, great, no problem. Come in and see me today and let's sit down and let's make a plan and let's have you talk to Greg and see what your budget should be, what homes you should be looking at, and let's plug you into the portal so you can search just like an agent does and get you off of Zillow. Because every time you go on there and they put in your information, you're going to have random strangers calling you and blowing up your phone. So we don't want that, right? So we're going to go through these steps to set you up for success at your buyer's consult, okay? So as soon as you have in your mind, in the next year to 2 years, I want to start looking at homes, that is actually when you should talk to a loan officer and talk to a realtor. And I don't want you to just arbitrarily Google them. I want you to find someone either you know, like, and trust, or someone that you know has worked with this person and they know, like, and trust them. That is very important because buying a home is a big deal, right? This is one of the biggest investments, if not the biggest investment you're going to make in your whole life. So you don't want to leave that choice to Google. So let's talk about after the buyer's consult, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go shopping, right? We're going to start looking for our new home. So the first thing that you're going to get ready is what's called your EMD. You'll hear people talk about your EMD, and that is your earnest money deposit. So when we titled this, How to Buy a Home with $500, that is because you could do a VA loan for $0 down and just have a $500 EMD invested in the process, or a rural development loan for $0 down, and all you have to do is have that $500 EMD invested in the process, right? Or you could get the down payment assistance, which is going to cover your closing costs and things of that nature, and only have to have that EMD as part of the process, right? So what an earnest money deposit is it's saying, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm serious about moving forward with your home. So I'm going to put this deposit with my realtor, and they're going to put it in their escrow account. And when we close, that money will go towards my closing costs. And if I just flake out and decide, you know, a week before closing, I no longer want to buy this house, then you get my earnest money deposit. Okay, so an earnest money deposit is an amount of money that you give to your realtor in the form of a check or a money order or something that's traceable, right? And they put it in their escrow account, and there it sits until closing. And then it gets applied towards your closing costs. So you do get that money going towards whatever they ask you to bring to closing. Now, that being said, you have your earnest money deposit ready. We want you to stick to the homes that the realtors send you, because again, if you veer away from that and you go onto Zillow, you may get your heart set on this house you've seen on Zillow, but it's not actually for sale. Or they'll say, oh, foreclosure coming up, and that's only because that person missed a payment on their mortgage. So stick to the homes that the realtor sends you. I also want you to drive by the homes because pictures are so deceiving. I just went and bought a new home for myself and my family last year. Used Greg for my mortgage because he's awesome. And I will tell you, it was so crazy. Even being in the business and doing this every day, I would look at the homes online and look at the pictures and be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great house. And then I'd walk in there or drive by it and look outside and I'm like, this doesn't look anything like the pictures. Or I would drive through the neighborhood and I'm like, oh yeah, I do not want to live in this neighborhood, right? So make sure you drive by and you see the outside of the homes, you see what's going on in the neighborhood, you check out your neighbors, right? You want to be in an area where the neighbors are taking care of the exterior of their homes. If you like a quiet area, you know, you want to drive down the block and make sure it's a quiet area. Or if maybe you have children and you want to be in an area where there's other children, you know, you're going to drive by and see if there's kids stuff that's outside. So driving by a home really gives you a feeling for what's going on and who your neighbors are going to be and what you're going to be surrounded by. So drive by and check them out. And then let your agent know which ones you actually want to go inside of, okay? When you go inside of them, I want to let you guys know, according to the National Association of Realtors, on average, the average home buyer actually only looks at about 6 to 8 homes. So this doesn't have to be a huge process where you look at 20 homes to get the home buying experience. If you walk into the first home and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this house, it's everything I always wanted, I need this house, then write an offer on it. There's no reason that you have to go and see 6 more, because especially in this current market, you know, I always tell my clients, like, I'll be here for the next 20 years selling real estate, but this home might not be here for the next 20 minutes. So if you love it, like, let's go ahead and write on it. And when it comes to writing on an offer on your home, your agent should be calling the other agent and finding out, are there other offers? What's important to the seller? And then they're going to guide you on what you should write when it comes to the terms of your offer by what's important to that seller. So sometimes when I write an offer, we're writing offers that are over asking price, and we're giving sellers 3 days after closing to stay in the home. But sometimes, even today, when I'm writing an offer, we're writing for under what the seller is asking for because there's no other offers on the home. And I ran the values in the area and it's kind of priced high. So if there's no other offers and it's kind of priced high, I'm going to guide my clients to go in low, right? Because your agent, guys, your agent has an actual duty to you to always look out for your best interests. So that's why I say your agent should be someone that you trust. If you don't feel like you can do exactly what your agent says when you're writing an offer, then you probably need a different agent. You should feel really strong and confident in your agent. And then I want you to also know there's always more fish in the sea. So sometimes clients, they get kind of like downtrodden. Oh, I really loved this house and then I didn't get it. And I really loved this house and I didn't get it. Okay, I don't want to look anymore. I don't want to look anymore. You should keep looking because there are always more homes coming on the market. And quite often, somebody may not get 1 offer, 2 offer, maybe even 3 or 4. And then all of a sudden, the best house that they've seen through the whole process comes on the market. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I kept at this because this house is so much better than the first 3 that we offered on. Right? So always know that the world is working out for you, right? So you're always going to be able to find another house if the first one you don't bid on happens. But a lot of times, again, today, even in a competitive market, we're very often getting the first offer accepted. So I'm walking with clients and they're like, I love it. I'm helping them to write a strong offer. They follow my guidance, that offer gets accepted, and they get into that first one that they love and they don't have to go any further. So again, putting that faith and that trust in your agent and all of that rapport comes from that initial buyer's consult. So once you have your offer accepted, the next thing that we're going to go through is what's called your due diligence period. So your due diligence period is really where everybody is helping you to cross the T's and dot the I's. So what happens during that, right? So kind of to recap, you got pre-approved, you went to your buyer's consult, you went out and went shopping, you wrote an offer, the offer gets accepted. The next thing you're going to do is what's called your private home inspection. So your agent should advise you of a couple inspectors that they often use, that they know, like, and trust. And that inspector is going to come out to the home with you and your agent, and they're going to go out and they're going to check the house top to bottom, okay? They're going to crawl on the roof and make sure that's sound. They're going to crawl in the crawl space, make sure it's dry. They're going to flush every toilet, turn on every sink. They're going to make sure that that house inside and out is solid and it is a good house for you to buy. So you feel even extra confident about it. If for some reason you find something that you didn't know was there, right? Like maybe there's a crack in the foundation or something that you guys couldn't see when we walked through, you can renegotiate that based on that. You could say, you know what? It's not a deal breaker, but I think that I should have $1,000 off because all these window seals are blown and eventually I'm going to have to get new windows, right? So this is a point where you can renegotiate if something comes up that you didn't see. And it is also a point in time where if it's just something that is a deal breaker, like a foundation problem, and you're like, hey, I'm not paying 50 grand to get this house mud jacked and redo the whole basement, right? You could at that point in time get your deposit back and go back to shopping. So this is kind of like your one last stop shop where you're like, either I'm moving forward, the house is great, hey, I found some things that are wrong, we need to renegotiate, or hey, it's just way too big, way too expensive, this isn't going to be the home for me and I'm going to move on. Okay, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 9.5 times out of 10, home inspection's done, we're happy, we're moving on. After the home inspection is done, your realtor is really going to take the ball and pass it over to your loan officer. And this is where, Greg goes to work and he orders your appraisal. Okay. So an appraisal is different from a home inspection. A home inspection makes sure the house is sound. The appraisal make sure it tells you what the value of the home is. And that comes from the other homes in the area. And they do a half a mile within the last 6 months, homes that are similar to your home in size and in condition. What did those sell for? That's how they decide what the value of your home is. So they're going to do that appraisal. And I always tell my clients, remember, this is a human. So it doesn't happen often, but once in a while, maybe you have an offer accepted for $300,000 and the appraiser goes in and they might say, ooh, I'm having a great day. I love this home. I'm going to give it a value of 305. Or they might say, oh my gosh, I had an awful day. I'm grumpy. I'm angry. I'm only going to bring this one in at 295. Okay. So sometimes it comes in a little low. Sometimes it actually comes in high. More often than not, though, it comes in at the purchase price because you had a good agent who helped you know what it was going to come in at, and you're able to take that appraisal and then move on. Okay. Next up is going to be a city inspection. If your city is a city that has city inspections. Now, this is again different from a home inspection, different from an appraisal. Home inspection says this house is safe and good for you, and that's done for you and paid for by you. An appraisal says this house has the value that it needs to have. A city inspection is literally just a way for the city to make some extra money and come in and say if your house is up to the city standard. Now, if you live in Michigan and you are in, say, Wayne County, this is where you will interact with city inspections. Most other counties in the state of Michigan don't have it. And if you live in another state, just ask your realtor if that's something that they do. It is in less cities than more cities. So it's something that we don't run into a super often amount of time. The next thing you're going to be doing is getting your homeowner's insurance on your property. Homeowner's insurance is what protects you after the closing. So if your house burns down or it gets flooded or something of that nature, that's when you would utilize your homeowner's insurance. And they have the lender covered and you covered. And there is something called a clue report. So when you're shopping for homeowners insurance, whatever company you're going to go through, you can ask for a copy of the clue report. And it's like, you get a Carfax for cars. A clue report is like a house fax for houses. So it tells you if that house has ever been flooded, on fire, vandalized. It tells you if any homeowners insurance claims have ever happened. So a lot of people don't know about clue reports, but it's something that you can request from your insurance company. So once Greg and the finance team get all of these things, they run your whole package through underwriting, and underwriting, that's when they may come back to you and say, you know what, we need another pay stub or we need another bank statement, right? And then they're going to say you're good to go. The other part of due diligence is what's called title, and title ensures that there's no liens on the house later. So title says that all the back taxes will be paid, all the back water will be paid. So you'll never get into your house and somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, the last owner didn't pay their water bill, you got to give me $500. Or, hey, the last homeowner didn't pay their taxes, you got to give us $5,000, right? That's what title work does. It makes sure that moving forward, everything is solid on your home and nobody's going to come up and say, I own this house or you owe me for something I've done to this house. So once all of this due diligence is done, then Greg or whoever your loan officer is, they're going to say, all right, you're clear to close. So those are our 3 magic words. You're clear to close. You can go to the closing table, and that is where the magic happens, right? You're going to get what is called your closing disclosure. That's going to be a final assessment of every single dollar and cent. So you'll be able to see on there that earnest money deposit you put up front, how much your appraisal cost, how much you're paying the seller back for taxes. Every dollar and cent that had to do with the deal is going to be on that closing disclosure, and you'll be able to see that before you come to the table. You should also do a final walkthrough on the home. You're going to walk through and make sure it's in the same shape as it was when you walked through it and made the offer. If for some reason, oh my gosh, we walked through it, our final walkthrough, and there's water in the basement or something unexpected, that's when your agent will go back to the seller's agent and say, hey, can't close until your seller takes care of X, Y, Z. Again, that's something that doesn't happen often, but no, if you find yourself in that position, it's still fixable. You don't have to take a house that's broken. That is also when you will transfer your utilities. If you know you're going to close on August 6th, You can call up DTE and consumers and say, okay, activate my gas and my electric on October 6th or whatever that day is. And then that's when occupancy will come forward too. So what occupancy means is sometimes a seller needs a week or 2 weeks or 30 days after closing to move out. So they may have said, I want to make sure that this buyer closes and I get my money so that I can use that for my next sale. So they may say, you know, I'm staying for another so many weeks. You'll know that when the offer is written so that you can plan around that. But just giving you a heads up that you don't always get keys at the closing table. If that is something that is important to you, though, make sure you let your realtor know. It's very important to me. Time is a factor. That's one of my goals, is to get my keys at the closing table. And they'll make sure they write that into your contract and that they negotiate that way. This is also when you'll find out how much you need for funds to close. Oftentimes your loan officer will have already told you this. You'll already know, but it may be a difference of a couple dollars and cents. So Greg may have said your closing costs are going to be around, you know, $595.37. And then maybe the tax prorations, because we close on a different day, are $1.50 difference, right? So you're going to find out after they say you're clear to close, when you get that closing disclosure, exactly how many dollars and cents it is to go to closing. And then you're going to have your actual closing day. So here in our office, we like to do it up big. We have the buyers and the sellers and everybody come and we all do it together and we eat fresh baked chocolate cookies and have a fun time. But closing can really happen anywhere that you want it to happen. So title companies, they have notaries. They can go to your house and close you. Sometimes you'll close with the seller. Sometimes you'll close on your own. And that is a flexible thing that you can set up. So don't feel like you have to be tied to something specific. You're always able to ask your agent to make special accommodations for you. It's always doable. I used to work with investors that were in countries that were overseas, and we still were able to close them while they're in China and we're in the US, right? And then after closing, we want you guys to know that you have vendor support, meaning if you had your home inspected and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, something came up afterwards that the inspector missed, right? My inspectors actually will buy your home back if they miss something during your home inspection. So know that even after your closing date, you have support. Your realtor should still be there for you. Your loan officers will still be there for you. Like I said, I used Greg for my mortgage, and my husband called him the other day because we changed our insurance companies, and we were like, hey, we changed our homeowners insurance companies. How do we get that put into our payment and get rid of the other one? And he was there to support us through that. So don't be afraid to reach back out to people that were there for you during the process after the closing is over. They're there to support you, okay? And then next, some action items, right? You want to take away from this action items what to do now. First and foremost, understand and improve your credit and be patient. This does take time, but even guys, even if your credit is super awful, right? We went through short sales or bankruptcies or foreclosures or an ex stole our identity and racked up a bunch of credit card debt, right? Like crazy things happen. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It happens to everybody. We're all human. These things can be improved. So again, you want to reach out to somebody like Greg or myself, and we will help you. Greg actually has an analyzer where he can tell you, if you pay this much on this credit card, it will help your score go up this much. Or if you pay this much on this credit card, it'll help your score go up this much. Or hey, get this secured credit card, and after 6 months, your credit score should be this, right? So there are always ways to improve your credit score. I know Greg touched on this. I have a 17-year-old son, and I made him an authorized user on 3 of my credit cards. So he doesn't have those credit cards in his wallet because he probably lose them, but he is getting a good credit score from that. So don't be afraid to ask your parents like, hey, mom, dad, you don't have to give me a credit card, but can you put me on as an authorized user so I start building good credit over time? And then set a timeline. You know, they always say, what's the best time to buy in this stock? Well, it was yesterday, right? So set a timeline. Hey, I want to be moved in a year or 2 years, and start lining those things up. If you're going on a road trip, you pack before you go, because that saves you money when you get there, right? You don't want to show up in Chicago and have to go shopping on the Magical Mile and spend $1 million on the clothes. You want to bring your clothes with you, right? And the same thing goes for when you're buying a home. You want to put all these things in step now so it saves you money later. And then do your homework. This is so important, guys. When I bought my first home, I had a realtor who actually, they weren't even licensed to do real estate. They were like helping somebody else who was licensed to do it. She showed me 3 houses, was like, which one do you want? And if you buy one today, I'll buy you breakfast. And I was like, I'm 20, I want breakfast. I'll take number 2. That looked the best. I didn't know, I had no idea that like I could see more homes and I could be picky, and like I didn't have to choose today. Eggs aren't that important, right? So do your homework and know like what resources are around you. What are good areas for you? What is going to be around? Maybe you're having children in the future. What are the schools like? Try to think not about your today self, but about like, what would my next year self, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now self really want? And then also, even though you're buying today, think about resale, right? That first house I bought was an awful house for resale. It was a 3-bedroom brick ranch with no basement and no garage. But I wasn't thinking about resale. I was just like, oh, it has a nice kitchen, I'll take it. Nobody wants to buy a house without a garage or a basement. Like, that stinks, right? You need somewhere to put your stuff. So also be thinking about what's next. Be thinking about your lending. Like Greg said, I know a lot of you guys are college students, and people often will be offering you student loans. Well, if you want to be able to buy a home, remember that all those student loan payments are going to go into what's called your debt to income ratio. So you need to make, twice as much as you are spending. You have to be thinking about that and how those student loans are going to be affecting it. Also be thinking about your jobs, right? When I was in college, I worked 4 jobs. I waitressed, I bartended, I helped at a hospital, and then I interned at a mortgage shop, and that's how I got into this. Well, those are 4 totally like different realms. So if you're going to, work as a nurse, and you don't like that job anymore, just make sure your next job is also in nursing. Make sure you're staying in the same line of work, because that does matter and that does count. We also talked about using a bank. Make sure all of your money is traceable. I've had people like, well, I have $10,000. Okay, great. It's in the safe at my house. I don't trust the banks. Okay, well, that's gonna be tough, right? We have to be able to trace that money. I know Greg mentioned you can get gifts. So maybe dad or mom gives you a gift for $500 or $5,000 to buy your first home. That's totally doable. And then choose wisely. Like I've said so many times, choosing a good realtor and making sure you have a good mortgage person is everything. I just closed a deal yesterday, and I was on the seller side, and they're relocating to Florida, and they're like, oh my gosh, the difference between working with you and working with the Florida agent is night and day. And when I came over for their listing appointment, I actually taught them how to make strong offers for the house that they were buying. And they were like, we had to use all the things you taught us for our new purchase, because our realtor didn't know any of those things, and we were losing houses, and now nobody's talking to each other, and it's just a mess. And they're like, it was so smooth with you. So it really does make a huge difference that you get good agents and good people on your side. And then please be realistic about your budget. So like Greg was saying, not everything is included in your debt to income ratio. So you may go to your loan officer and they're like, you're pre-approved for $500,000. But they are taking into effect that you drive really fast and you got a whole bunch of tickets, and now your car insurance is a crazy amount. And you have to factor in that car insurance and your doggy daycare and all of these things that your loan officer isn't factoring in because they don't have to. And you need to make a budget that's actually sustainable for you in real life, right? So don't just max out what they say you can have, because they aren't taking into effect your car insurance or your cell phone or your utilities. I have people, they buy these big giant houses and then they can't pay to heat these big giant houses, right? So think about those things. Think about how much utilities are. Make sure you sit down, you make a spreadsheet, you make a budget, and you really know what you're going to spend. And guys, my first house I bought, I also had 3 roommates from college, and we made our budget together, and the house was in my name, but I was counting on, you know, Katie to pay the electric and Jason to pay the gas and everybody to give me $200 to go towards my mortgage payment. Well, as they got girlfriends or boyfriends or moved out or relocated, guess who was left with all those bills? Me. So make sure that when you do that budget, you can afford this all on your own without your roommates, all by yourself, if it comes to that, because life changes and things happen and it can come to that, right? And then just, again, make sure you're pre-approved and you have a plan with your loan officer. That will save you stress and time and money. Okay, any questions? Anybody have any questions? Okay, so in the chat, if you put your EMD down, but don't get the house because they sold it to someone else, do you get your EMD back? So that is a fantastic question. When you put your earnest money deposit down, they actually cannot, that takes the house off the market. So they cannot accept any offers from anybody else. And also they cannot show the home anymore to other people. So when you say this house is mine, and I should add a little bit to that, if you're getting a private home inspection, they are allowed to show it through the period of the home inspection. But as soon as you say, we're good with our home inspection, we're moving forward, that EMD is locked in and they cannot show the house anymore or sell it to anybody else. That is all yours. You are the only one that can get it. You're welcome. Anybody else, any questions? Going once? Oh, is there programs for first-time home buyers? So yes, absolutely. Greg, did you want to chat a little bit to that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a first-time home buyer just means that you haven't bought a house in 3 years. So it's all dependent on, you know, what you might qualify for. So when we go back to like conventional as first-time home buyer programs, FHA as first-time home buyer programs, there's different programs in each of those though. So I mean, MSHDA is that MSHDA down payment assistance program is a down payment. It's a first-time home buyer program. Conventional has Home Ready and Home Possible, which are both first-time home buyer programs. So it's all dependent on your debt to income ratio, your credit score, how much money you're putting down. A lot of times the down payment assistance programs are helping to offset either having low down and helping you with your interest rate and that mortgage insurance rate, or it's helping with the actual cost.
Great, great. So yeah, so for example, Elizabeth, one of my agents, Rachel, she had a first-time home buyer who worked with Greg, and she got the MSHDA down payment assistance. So that helped cover all of her closing costs. And then Rachel also asked for what were called seller concessions. So seller concessions means, hey, we're giving the seller, let's say the house was listed at 90,000. And Rachel comes in and says, hey, your house is listed at 90,000. How about we give you 95,000 and you give us back $5,000 in seller concessions. So basically you're saying you're still gonna get $90,000, Mr. Seller, but 5,000 of that is gonna pay for my client's closing costs. So when Rachel structured the deal like that with concessions, coupled with that first-time homebuyer program, MSHDA down payment assistance, her client actually got a check back at closing. So that was really cool that she got to buy her first home, and after closing, she actually got a check back and got her keys to close. So those first-time homebuyer programs are really strong for helping you to be able to navigate not having to bring a lot of money out of your pocket. So like we talked about, buying that home with $500 and sometimes even being able to get some money back when you couple that with the concessions and structuring the deal so that the seller still gets what they want and you're able to get what you need as a first-time home buyer. Great question. You're welcome. Are there any differences in process if you aren't planning on living in the house, you're leasing it out instead? So great question. There aren't differences in the process. The process still looks the same. You should still get pre-approved. You should still do the buyer's consult, do the shopping, all of that. So the process looks the same, but the lending guidelines, so what Greg will approve you for, looks different. So do you want to talk to that for a few minutes, Greg? Because I know a lot of people are interested in investing and buying homes for income producing.
Yeah, so realistically, all an interest rate is we're assessing risk. So if you have great credit and you have a big down payment, it's not very risky. You get a really low down payment, or you get a really low interest rate. If you are not going to be living in the house, they assess that as very risky, because if you don't pay your mortgage, you don't live in the house, it's not really going to affect you as much. Obviously, you'll lose some money, but you're not losing your shelter. So it's going to be a higher interest rate. They're going to require more down. So at minimum 15%, but realistically more like 20% down. As purchasing, if you're purchasing it solely as an investment property, meaning you'll never live in it. There is a middle ground where they'll call it a second home. If say you were going to buy a house, and live in it part of the year and rent it out part of the year, they consider that a second house. But if you're solely buying it to rent it, you got to buy it as an investment property. You have to use a conventional loan. You can't use any of the other programs we discussed. The conventional loan is the only one that will allow an investment property. Everything else is, you'd have to buy it as a primary residence.
I also want to add to that though, Greg, when me and you were discussing it, you said that we could utilize that second home program, right? And Airbnb it if we were going to live in it, and then Airbnb it the other part of the time.
Yes.
I know that is a great way to like get yourself into this process. I was talking about for myself buying a lake house that I was going to spend some time in and then Airbnb it and make money off of that. So you could use that second home, put less money down, get a better interest rate, be able to use it sometimes yourself, and then Airbnb it out as a second form of income as well, right?
It always comes down to intent, right? Like if you tell me that you're going to live in it and you never live in it, well, I would never know. And that's one of those things that always comes down to intent. From a second home standpoint, if you have a residence in, let's say, Livonia, and you're buying a second house in Farmington, well, the underwriter is going to say, you're not, you're either going to live in it or you're not. That's not really a second house. That's not somewhere where you're probably going to live half the year. If it comes down to circumstance where you do have a scenario where it could work. It's just one of those things where is the house, and then the underwriter is going to make a determination based on fact.
Right. Awesome. Great questions. I love these questions, guys. They're awesome. You're welcome. Anybody else? Anything we can walk you through? Perfect. Well, this was fantastic. I appreciate you all. My email address is on the screen right now. Please feel free to email me anytime. If you are in another area that's not Michigan and you want some help with finding a good solid realtor or finding a great mortgage person or repeating anything I said, anything you guys need, please feel free to email me anytime. Like I said, it is my passion. It is my goal to make sure people really love the home buying process. And then my website's on there as well. You guys can feel free to hit me up on social media, whatever. I am always here to help, and I appreciate all of you and all of your time. Thanks so much, guys.